Have you found yourself wondering, is there something more? If so, then you, my friend, are a dreamer in waiting. I'd like to welcome you to the Dream On podcast. I'm Julia Gentry, and along with my husband, Travis Gentry, we discuss real, raw, and not small talk conversations about faith, family, entrepreneurship, and all the things that matter most in this life in order to help people bridge the gap between what they currently have and what they really want most. Join us as we give you insights, tools, and strategy to chase every dream that's on the inside of you. But be forewarned, this podcast is not for the faint of heart, but rather those of heart. This is the Dream On podcast.
So here we are, episode 1.
Episode 1.
The podcast that has been the podcast in our minds for months and years. Literally, I think. Literally years. We've started and stopped. Mm-hmm. So here we are. We're excited to finally launch the podcast and talk about the things that have been on our mind, all the things that we've rethought, all the things that we feel like are in us to be able to help people. And there's no better time than now.
Can I admit that I'm a little nervous?
It's a little different.
Consciously incompetent.
As we move forward with this podcast. We've been watching podcasts for years.
So long. And
then when you actually do it, it's so easy to judge and compare when someone else is doing something.
You're like, I could do it so much better.
Yeah. And then you do it and you're like, this is hard. I feel awkward and we're talking.
So we're inviting you to join us in our awkward.
And we do have this, so we are recording it, so it'll be on YouTube, and then you'll have the audio. So we will talk about a few things that you can go to the website or go to YouTube and get downloads or different things. So we may hold up something or have a picture or something, but just so you know that it will be audio and then video too.
Yeah, and the cool part about this one, we just wanted to bring you to our home. So if you are watching on YouTube, we are doing this first podcast just from the comfort of our home. We have one baby actually taking a nap right now, so we'll see how that goes.
And 3 at the skate park.
3 at the skate park.
With our nanny.
So we're just excited. And maybe you can share just a little bit first, Trav, like why are you most excited for this podcast?
I'm most excited about, one, to actually do it and stop talking about it.
Do it and stop talking about it.
Just get her done. So I do have a coffee mug that says "Get her done," and just really to share all of the things that we've learned over the last 15 plus years from entrepreneurship to now having 4 kids. Moving, traveling in RV full time, selling everything, all the things that we've done, it's just to share it. And it hasn't been pretty, all of it. We've had some great successes and we've had some failures and depressions along the way. And so we just want to share that and showcase it and understand that some of the things that we thought it wasn't really what it was. Yep. And so I'm excited just to help people to rethink as we constantly rethink everything.
Love it. So
what are you excited about?
I'm biased, but I think we have some of the best conversations behind closed doors. I mean, I really think that I married one of the most profound human beings, and
I would agree to that.
And I think I have some good things to say every once in a while.
I would agree to that.
I really think that I love our journey, and I really think that behind closed doors we have so many deep conversations, which is what brought us together in the first place. And so I think I'm excited to finally share that with people, because I feel like more and more and more we have people that are like, you think how, and what are you doing, and how did you do that? And it's almost like, oh, if I could just give them an inside seat into our bedroom or our closet or our car or our kitchen table or over the kids or anywhere.
Totally, because you just see snippets, whether it's social media and Facebook, and you see like, oh, they're here, or they're traveling, or they sold everything, or they're doing this, or they bought real estate, or they're, it's like, what are the Gentrys doing? So we've had some friends over the years kind of say like, where are you? What are you doing? And
you just want to share like the mindset, right? The tools, the strategy, the prayers that went from A to Z. And
it seems so normal. Like when we're doing something, we're like, this just makes total sense.
People are like, you guys are insane.
And sometimes looking back, you're like, that made a whole lot of sense or none at all, but it was so fun doing it. So
So I think just giving the gift to ourselves and to all of our listeners and really our dreamers now, that's the second piece, is that I just believe now more than ever before, it's time to dream. We have to dream. We have to realize our dreams. We have to clarify our dreams. And I think especially, depending on people who are listening to this, we're in the middle of this COVID, right? Like this huge pandemic. And so I think that fear and worry and doubt is at an all-time high, rightfully so.
Yep.
And I think the only way we overcome that is by learning to dream, learning to go to a deeper level, learning to sit with God, learning to sit with ourselves, learning to face the fears. And so I'm psyched to be a voice for people that go, I'm born to dream. I'm born for a reason. I have something on the inside of me that needs to come out of me, and to play a role in coming alongside of some of those dreamers and say, like, us too, me too.
Yeah.
You too, like, let's
and just
do
creating
this.
the community.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the community, it's the mindset, it's, what you think is prohibiting you from living out your dream is really not.
Totally.
And so, well, let's dive in. So we decided to kind of do like a Q&A. So instead of just kind of go on a rant about us, I'm going to ask Julia questions. She's going to ask me questions. And we'll kind of, a little bit of a timeline, but just kind of questions that hopefully will give you a little insight on who we are and some of the things that we've done thus far.
Okay, great.
So I'm going to, me first?
You first.
All right. So I'm going to sit back for this one. When did you know, let me make sure I'm close to the mic. When did you know you loved me? Now I can sit back.
When did you know you loved me? Oh man, when did I know I loved you? I loved you the minute, I know people say this, so this sounds so trite, but I knew the minute I saw you. And I was 17 years old. I worked at Glamour Shots, y'all, which starts to date us. I feel like people talk about things that date you. That? You know what I'm saying? Even if you're like 18 right now, you're like, what's Glamour Shots? I'm old enough to be able to do that.
She was the lead photographer at Glamour Shots.
Lead photographer.
At 17 years old. So that just shows you
how amazing
the quality.
So I remember I worked at Glamour Shots and you worked at GNC. And I remember the day that you walked in the side doors and you had a backpack on. And you walked by me, and I had this intuitive sense that went, wherever that guy is going, I want to go with him.
With his backpack?
With his cute little backpack. And then he headed into GNC. I'd never bought a protein bar in my life. I'm pretty sure I didn't even take supplements at the time. And I was there every day. And so I think it was that early. I think I was 17, and I was just completely in love with you. And then only for us to become such good friends. I remember times that we would sit in my car and for hours and upon hours, just talking about
and
this.
Just make out.
No,
just talk.
I wish he would have made out with me. You guys, I wish Travis Gentry would have made out with me. And then the day that you finally did make out with me, do you remember what I said? Do you remember the first question I asked you after you got done kissing me?
What are we?
What are we?
We are
done.
We're done. You're heading home, and we're.
So yeah, I think it was that. I think from the minute I saw you, I loved you.
Yeah, but what you were saying, yes, we used to talk for hours about
all of our dreams.
What did we want to do? Who do we want to become? And Julia was 17. I was 22. 21 or 22.
Yeah, I was just graduating high school. You were getting ready to graduate college.
So there was a huge difference in age and what I was into, what I was doing, my experiences at that point.
Yep.
And but we would sit and talk. We became
best friends.
Really good friends.
I wanted so much more, but I settled for best friends.
She said I broke up with her, but I didn't know we were dating.
Look, and he's telling all my secrets already. That's horrible. Oh my goodness.
But
yeah. Okay. So we were best friends. Then I remember going to LA, right, to pursue what I thought was my dream, only to realize it wasn't.
Yep.
And you went. Where did you go?
I went to the Virgin Islands.
Oh, I do remember that. Yep. The Virgin Islands. How did you end up in the Virgin Islands?
With your mom.
My mom.
Yep.
I paid her. That's what happened. I said, we need to keep him
Travis
in the family.
with you? Yeah, your mom moved to the Virgin Islands, and then I moved out there to help, and I was going to do some construction. And then, after I lived there for, 2.5, 3 months, we'll have to show a picture of what I lived on. It was a houseboat, and I was pretty excited to live on a houseboat.
Only it wasn't.
Only it was a house on water, but
sort of floated.
yeah, kind of had to ride a dinghy boat back to it with no electricity, no water. And so it was like camping on the water in the ocean in the Virgin Islands. So it was an experience. So good. And I loved it. So I was out there for a couple years. A couple months, and then moved up to Chicago and was working for a fitness company up there.
Okay, that's right. So for those of you listening, our lives went into totally separate directions. I went one way, he went another way. We didn't even talk for a couple years.
Yeah, after I was in the Virgin Islands and moved to Chicago, we didn't talk for over a year.
And I will share, I was heartbroken. I really do think I had such a connection with Travis that I was heartbroken and resentful and sad. All the things. I read the book, He's Just Not That Into You, and I just cried myself to sleep. So yeah, that was hard. Those were a hard couple years for me.
Yep.
Okay, can I ask my question now?
I think so.
Okay. My turn. What is the first thing that comes to mind when I ask you, what made you first rethink everything?
Oh, hands down.
I'm going to take these because they could be loud on the microphone.
Hands down, the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. Read it was 2007, and it was when I went up to Chicago. I read that book, and then it started me to rethink everything. So if you don't know the book, haven't read the book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, that was the first of many books that I've read by him. I've been to some of his workshops, and but just helped me to open my eyes to a whole new way of thinking and categorizing entrepreneurship and an employee and self-employed and investing.
Because at the time you worked for a company.
Yeah, worked for a fitness company. Did well for my age at that time. And after probably about 6 months, got my own store outside of Chicago in Crystal Lake, Illinois, and was there, and then got the opportunity to move up to Milwaukee to open a store up there, and they were opening 3 or 4 other stores, and so I moved up there, and that's when we got reconnected. So watching that process of like getting a job, making good money, kind of going up what you'd consider the company ladder, making great money, and being miserable and thinking there's got to be more. And now I know, because reading the book, I was like, there's more to life than just a paycheck.
Totally. And I remember, it's so funny because I remember once I joined you in Milwaukee, I remember thinking in my head, I remember the day, like, we have everything that people say you have, and you should be happy, right? Like, I wasn't even working. I had retired. I was like 19 years old. I didn't have to work because...
Jokingly we
were saying that because you made enough money and then some for us to have the life, right? We had a nice house at that age, and we had our cars, and we traveled, and we did some of those things. But I remember the day that you came home, and you said you felt like you were a fish in a fishbowl, watching the world pass you by.
Oh, I remember that too. It was one of those days where you're like a tipping point.
Yeah.
I still remember it today, sitting there thinking, watching the cars and me being in this container, because the whole store was like glass around me.
Yeah.
So just sitting there and watching almost like life go by, and you're like, I gotta do something.
Yep. And I remember looking at you going, well, I don't know what that means, because I was, I hadn't I hadn't read the book yet, first of all.
And then we took a workshop. So that was kind of let's take the next step. Let's do something about it. Let's just not dream and think about it. So we signed up for a Rich Dad class, a workshop up in Green Bay. Yep. Went up there, and so we got the books, and that's when you started to read them.
I started reading them, pretending like I knew what they were saying, and having absolutely no clue. I mean, I remember going to the gym going, maybe if I get on the treadmill and read while I run, like, I can get my mind and body.
It's a totally different language. I mean, lease options.
So anything, right? Anything new.
House.
Like doing this podcast, right? Like, not that hard, and you're going to join us through this consciously incompetent phase. Like, nobody likes doing something new, and here's why.
For the first time,
because you don't feel competent. You feel ridiculous. So I remember that phase going, oh my gosh, I have no idea what this is, what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
I don't like it. maybe, and then we kind of started having those conversations. Well, we will when,
Yep.
right? Like when we
Once
have
we
enough
have a
money in the
certain
bank,
amount of money saved up.
once we get married,
Yep.
once we this, once we that.
Because understanding when we're making that much money at that point, it's so hard to leave a job when you're like, why would I leave this when it's one of the easiest jobs?
Mm-hmm.
It's flexible. I am my own boss for this company because I was the manager of the store.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I leave this? And knowing that I had to. So that was in probably like summer-ish time,
of 2007.
maybe late summer.
Yep.
And so that's when in December, so this was 2007 going into 2008. And in December, that's when everything changed.
Everything changed. That's when the economy started slowly shifting.
Yeah, the stores weren't doing that great. And then the tipping point from there, the 2008 kind of recession, everything that happened with the mortgage crisis. And so
let me give you a timeline real quick. So then we're right heading into like November of 2007. Travis comes home and he says, you know how we've been talking about jumping
We've been
into
to the
real estate?
workshop. We're going to do real estate.
I'm like, yes, we're going to do it once we get married, once we have a certain amount in the bank, once all of our ducks in a row, once it makes logical sense, once normal people do the things that they need to do to prepare. That what we've been talking about? He says, yes. And I quit my job. I put in my 2 weeks.
I put in my 2 week today.
And I was like, what are you talking about? And because they cut his pay in half,
almost literally in half, they cut my pay because the stores weren't doing good, and I was the way it was structured. They were going to restructure it, and it was going to almost cut my pay pretty much in half. And I was like, instantly, I said I can't do that. So I'm gonna, I'll do right by the store, right by you, but I'll, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever you need. But I'm done because I'm not going to do this job that I am miserable and hate life at this point.
We found the threshold.
Yeah.
So then fast forward a month and he asked me to marry him at Christmas time in front of all of our families. And I remember going, are you out of your mind? Like I didn't say that outside, but I remember going, we just quit his job. We're jumping into real estate full time, which we'd have no idea what we're doing. And we're going to get married. And little did I know that was a precursor for this next decade that we're going to share with you in about the next 25 minutes. But that was the precursor to what now has become our life, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
Like rethink everything, do it before you're ready.
Jump into it
even when your ducks aren't in a row. Trust each other. Like God's timing is greater than our own. Things happen for you. Every lesson that I feel like in this last decade that we've walked out, we learned
and some of
that moment.
And not thinking about that at that point. Tony Robbins says it, life happens for you, not to you. And at that point, you're not really thinking that, but it just felt right. We had a little bit of money saved up and we jumped in. And we're not going to get too much into that. Okay. I just want to say after, it was in December, and then I think in January or February, we decided it'd be a good idea to partner with another couple that we met up in Green Bay and move down to Nashville and move in with them. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So we're going to put out some YouTube videos and different things that will kind of go in depth on some of the things that we learned through this process of being an entrepreneur and real estate investing.
So you have to stay tuned. You have to keep listening.
You have to keep listening.
Is that a good plug?
Sure.
It's a good plug.
Why not?
We don't know what episode, but stay tuned.
Yeah, or YouTube video. So I'm going to ask another question.
Okay.
What's your greatest lesson to date of being an entrepreneur?
Oh, man. I mean, it had to be in this first venture of real estate, and again, we really will dedicate a whole podcast to understanding our journey. And that first year in real estate was brutal. I mean, we were learning, we bought deals we shouldn't have bought. We were spending money we shouldn't have spent. I mean, we ended up in a lot of debt in that first year. But fast forward, we ended up specializing in short sales and we partnered with someone who was an amazing fit for our personalities. He was an amazing partner. And we grew very fast. And so within that next year, going into our second year, we had hit the market spot on. So we specialized in short sales. We were making more money some months than most people made all year. Ultimately we grew to having a staff of there's 5. I mean, we were doing 20, 30 short sales at any given time.
Oh, more than that.
I mean, amazing growth. And you fast forward a couple of years and I'm leaving so many pieces out, but I'm just, let me get my answer out of my mouth, and then you can ask me some clarifying questions. So we were doing so well. We bought this sweet loft. We had bought amazing cars, like all of the things, I was 22, 23 years old.
$60,000 car.
$60,000 car. And then not all of a sudden, but then waking up and we're $100,000 in debt. We lived in my mom's unfinished basement. Like, we had to move out of our loft.
Well, you got to give a little bit of
Hold on, I'm going to. And so here's my short answer, is that the greatest lesson I learned as an entrepreneur is that it's not about the external game. I was so fixated on the external game, right? Like having more, acquiring more, doing all the right things. Like, we built a business, right? We were making money. It worked. And yet there was this internal game that hadn't changed. It's like why people win the lottery or why people make millions of dollars as an athlete only to lose it a couple years later. And we sat with this realization of, being an entrepreneur has nothing to do with just acquisition. It has to do with something that is on the inside of you, and that the inside of you starts to kind of create the world around us. Here we were, I personally was creating this world around me, only to realize like the world within me didn't catch up.
Yeah.
It hadn't caught up.
Yep.
That was like mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
Like feeling kind of the highs of the highs, and then all of a sudden the lows of the lows, and I was like, there's a different game here. What is that?
Yeah. Feeling like happened. We had it figured out externally. And it was a $40,000 car. And then a sweet loft. Yet months later, having to sell the car and living in an unfinished basement of my mother-in-law, which, let me tell you, that's not the highlight of my
that's what you live for.
My marriage by any means.
So sad.
Because we had only been married a couple years too.
Yeah.
So really taking a huge step backward, and much needed. There again, life happens for you.
Yeah, and so at this time, let's unpack that just for a second. I didn't think that life happened for us, right? Like I remember you saying that just a couple years ago, that life happens for us. I thought that it was happening to us, and so it shifted us into some rather dark times, because I started asking questions that I didn't even know was in me, like just dark questions, or fear and worry and doubt, and nothing is possible, and how are we going to get out of this? And I just remember being in this like black hole of fear, which kind of feels like where I see a lot of people today currently in this crisis that we're in. I remember being there only by ourselves, it felt like, asking questions like, am I ever going to get there? Will this ever work? I didn't believe in myself. So I think that was the greatest lesson I learned as an entrepreneur, that it doesn't have to do with all the stuff and the external circumstances, or if the economy is good or the economy is bad, or how much money you have or how much money you don't have.
Yeah.
Wherever I go, there I am.
Yep.
And that was the first time that I was like, is this the person I want to take with me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because you can, from an external perspective, it's easy to hide behind that.
Totally.
And so once that's gone, then there you are.
You start to question everything.
Yeah, because you're like, you thought you had it figured out. And most of it's monetary.
Yeah.
I have money, so I look good. Maybe I'm driving the car or wearing the clothes or doing whatever. And then to come to realize, like, I'm not equipped internally to maintain this or to grow it.
Yep. Which leads me to my next question. Can I ask you my next question?
Let's do it.
Okay. What has been one of the hardest seasons thus far?
Yeah, I mean, I'll piggyback on that, is in that time of going from making good money to being, $100,000 in bad debt, not having assets at that point, and still owing money on decisions that we made prior that we were paying off, living in my mother-in-law's basement. That was one of the hardest, darkest times, like rethinking, resetting everything. And like you said, it's me, has nothing to do with anything else. So turning to alcohol, turning to, depression of, we had no kids at the time. It was just me and Julia and a dog. And I remember a couple key moments of like, I can't keep like moving forward. Yeah. Like it's still like emotional. Like I remember like there was a couple times where it hit my knees of like, I'm going to kill myself by any means. But at that point of like, this is not what I thought my life was going to be at this point, from where I was to where I am. This doesn't make sense. Why?
Yeah.
Why, almost like, why, God?
Yeah.
Like, why is this happening to me? And really, yeah, going into just a pullback of everything, not really wanting to do anything, not stepping out, not having the courage anymore. My faith was, challenged.
Yeah.
And then, turning to alcohol to kind of, would be the right word.
Almost
just
like numb it.
Yeah, kind of quiet the voice in your head of, no, I'm going to drink so I don't have to really process or think or feel that emotion.
Yeah.
And so, and that happened for a good...
It had been a year. I mean, it was almost a year.
You think it was that long?
I think it was that long. Yeah. Because because in those times, right, like the now looking back, that's when we needed to continue to take some steps forward, and we finally did. But until we really came out of it, that was about a year.
Probably, yeah. Because then at one point, you have to make
we went and got
different
jobs.
Choices and eat some huge humble pie.
Humble pie.
We've had some humble pie for sure.
Hashtag humble pie. Follow that hashtag. I just want you to know. Let's use this. Anytime that we're going to now be sharing stories on Instagram or YouTube that are truly our journey of like just epic failures or lessons that we've learned, we're going to hashtag humble pie.
I remember going going from we had a Yukon Denali, and that was like a $40,000 car, and then we got a truck because we believed, well, we'll start traveling in an RV because that was always something that we wanted to do. Not having the RV, we bought the truck, and it was a huge diesel mega cab Dodge truck.
That cost like $120 to fill it up.
It was ridiculous. Still living in the basement of my mother-in-law. Not only that, then to go trade that in to get a light green Prius because it was like 20 some dollars. I remember taking a picture when we went to the gas station, fill it up the first time. I was like, this is amazing. It's like $22 to fill up this thing. It gets like 40 some miles to a gallon. But talk about some humble pie and just much needed to the pride that I had, some of my thoughts or judgments or comparisons to other people.
Yep.
Like I had to go to that low spot to be able to recognize, one, it's not the things around me.
Yep.
And two, how I was showing up and who I was was not going to get me to where I wanted to go long term.
Yeah, God was like, no, wait a minute.
Let's break this down now before the house of cards is too big.
So good. Okay, so that's a huge lesson, which, again, we have a limited time in this first podcast, but I think we need to talk about is that when you believe that there is a God and we are not him, right? And that he knows the beginning from the end, and that the breakdown is just as important as the buildup. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you can trust that your breakdown moments are God getting you to who you need to be, what you need to realize, the lessons you need to learn, so that when you start to rebuild again, that it's like a solid foundation. I really think that looking back, those were the hardest years, but those were the setup for planting new seeds for what was to come. Hindsight, right? When you're in it, don't get me wrong. When you're in it, this is not good. Is God even good? Do I believe in myself? Do I believe in God? Like, those questions are for real. So I'm not trying to like overlook the pain and sometimes that suffering that can bring. Yeah. But now looking back, we needed to hit our knees.
And that's, part of the rebuilding of the foundation to go to that next level. And like I think you've said multiple times is, give your pain purpose. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing a podcast and some of the things online and really building out this community, because we've had some really low points and we've had some high points and some, a lot of successes too. So that's what we're going to, just real and raw and sharing everything. So I'm going to ask you the next question.
Okay.
What is the one thing that's made the greatest impact on you?
Oh, our RV travel. I mean, so to give some context, we had been talking about traveling in an RV, I think since when I was 17 years old in the car, right? Traveling the country in an RV. Yeah. And then we talked about it when we bought the truck, to your point, when we were in crazy amount of debt. Because we actually,
in Milwaukee, we went and looked at a big A-class.
We almost signed on the dotted line.
And I think we had him hold it for like 24 hours.
We did.
So yeah, it was...
we've had so many times over the years that we've talked about it, right? And we talk about it and we talk about it and we talk about it. When we get there, then we will. We're playing that game. Maybe you can relate. When I get there, then I will. When I get there, then I will. And then what happens, looking back again, here's a little lesson that I'm sharing, is that it starts to like create so much energy in your brain that it almost like it was so dizzying. And I remember the day that we finally decided, but let me give a little bit more context again. So we had ended up, from all the things that you're talking about, we started to rebuild our lives again on better foundation and better soil. So I got into business coaching, which I loved. I think that was my first step into like, I was born for this, teaching and facilitating and community and moving people forward. And it was specifically about building business. Took all my lessons, all the failures, even the successes and how we did it, talking about strategic planning and process mapping and all the things. That was my like door into, I was born for something like this. You got back into real estate, only doing it your way in a different way.
I was doing fix and flips, picking up rentals, some wholesale deals.
You were so good at it. And so we just started to come alive again. We found our yellow house. We call it Riverdale, which was an amazing house. We had at this point 1 baby, 2 baby Malachi, and then Aslan. Bought the cars with cash. We started doing all the things that you needed to do. And then, this was about a 4-year process. And I remember we were still starting to have some of those questions of, is there something more, right? Like the dreamer's question. That is always like, that you're a dreamer when you're asking that question. Is there something more? And that's when we decided that we needed a pattern interrupt after, again, 4 years of rebuilding. And we moved down to Arizona. Remember, we did that for a year, almost a year?
Yep. Well, no, the first trip we did, so we bought another truck and got a 5th wheel and did a 3 or 4 month up to the East Coast. And then came back to Colorado, and I'll keep it short because we'll do some different things on this. Bought a house to fix up, and it was probably 5 or 6 days before Christmas, and the kitchen caught fire. And so that was another pattern interrupt. And at that point, we were going to move in. We were living with my parents at the time, which is, they're living with any family. It's hard and such a blessing at the same time. So we were so excited to move into the house. It caught fire, and we were like, we need to go do something. So we went down to Arizona, and just to kind of get away from the environment and be in, nice weather and a pool. And that's when we were down there, we were like, hey, why don't we just move down here? Like, we have nothing at this point. I can sell this house, fix it up. It wasn't a major fire, thank God, but enough to have us take a couple steps backwards. And so down there, that's when we said, why don't we just fix it up, sell it, and move down here? So
we did.
We did.
Another one of those brilliant and insane, right? Are we brilliant or insane? Both. So I remember we were in Arizona. We had been there for about 6 months, and we started circling the whole full-time RV travel again, right? Like that question wasn't going away. Is there something more? We had gotten away from our normal. We had created a pattern interrupt. We had just had our 3rd, because that's what you do when you have your 3rd. You start asking questions like, should we travel the country in an RV with a newborn baby?
Well, you were pregnant.
Well, yeah, but remember, we started having these conversations after Nick's
Yeah. But you were pregnant, and then we moved down to Arizona.
And so I remember us sitting outside at a restaurant, and we were like, okay, let's talk about this. And we said, if we don't do this now, we're never going to talk about it again, because it's causing so much energy. It's so distracting. Like, we're either going to do this or we're not going to do this. And we'll talk about this more because I want to get to my answer. So we decided to sell everything. We did a living estate sale.
Well, a couple of days later, I said, okay, if we're going to do this,
we need to do this.
Let's do this. And so I came in
with a good idea.
With a great idea. And I said, why don't we sell everything and position it as like, a living estate sale, posted it on Craigslist.
And in my head, I'm like, this is never going to work.
And within probably 4 hours, we had almost 90% sold. I've never seen
3,000, 3,200 square foot house.
Everything was
sold. Everything, beds, tables, chair, like
Like I literally had a baby in my arm. I had Malachi on one leg and Aslan on one leg. And they were like, what is going on? And people are like, how much for this? How much for that?
It was like an auction. We were definitely not prepared as far as how many people.
We didn't put price tags on things because we were like, we'll just kind of slowly.
Yeah, there was a line, and we'll do a video on that because it was the way we set it up and positioned it and had people there. I'll share how we did that because it was such a experience.
So after we had sold my 17 vases and 120 gift bags and
all the things that you needed that were on all the cabinets.
That I needed. I remember even packing, going, Trav, should we save this? He's like, you have 17 vases. You haven't even used one of them in the last year. But I remember that the RV, we had very different experiences of it, but it was like the time that I feel like I hit my knees. Like I learned things about me that I didn't even know were still going on. Like my control issues, I had no idea. I think I knew all the principles of God, but I didn't know them at a heart level. Like I think I was still compartmentalizing my life. I think that I had so much structure. I had enough routine. I could organize things. I could control things. And even though to some people it looked like we were taking risks or doing things, it was still within my bandwidth. You know what I mean? And I remember handfuls of times in the RV that I knew the only way I was going to mentally and emotionally survive was if I surrendered. And I remember crying sometimes at night going, I can't surrender. I can't surrender. Like it almost makes me emotional now. Like I cannot lose control. You know, like I don't want to surrender. I don't want to lose control. I don't want to let go, you know? And I just remember this RV being like, dang, you know, just like that time of where, shoot, I don't want to let go. And so I think that was like my great awakening of learning to trust you, learning to trust me, learning to trust God at a level that I didn't know I wasn't doing. Like I didn't know that I hadn't found my, I don't know, like my capacity stretch, but it just stretched me in so many different ways.
And I had no idea what I was doing and loved every minute of it.
And I didn't, but it was so good. Like, I feel like you were so up and I was so emotionally like starting my great awakening, right?
Yeah.
Like I was just starting to pray in ways that I've never prayed and journal in ways that I've never journaled. This is where my book started, right? Like this is where the idea of the book and my first initial like chapter entries, it all was in this journey.
Yeah.
So that was like the biggest tipping point for me, for sure.
Yeah. And we've talked about it in the past, but for everyone listening, my experience was totally different. I thrived in it, loved it. Selling everything was like just this freeing of just stuff at that time. And then jumping into, you know, the A-class RV, which if you're not familiar, it's like the big bus style. And I remember flying, I found it online and we'd sold everything. We came back up here because we were going to leave from Colorado where we're at currently. And I flew out to California because I found one and I was driving back and you'd asked me like,
I called you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause you're driving in it.
Yep.
Our dream come true, right? Like he's driving in our dream come true.
Yep. Flew out there, drove back the next day with the RV. It had no intention. I didn't even book a plane ticket back. I was like, this is it. Yep. And driving back and you called me. I forget what did you say?
I said, how does it feel? Like you were we've been talking about this like in my mind. We've been talking about this for 10 years. How does it feel to finally be driving it?
And I was like, it feels natural and normal. And like I've already been here before because we've been thinking about it and processing it. And it's been in the back of our mind for so many years.
For so long. And it was, I mean, when we look back, so we traveled full time as RVers. It really was such a cool journey. I mean, we went to Texas and Utah and California and Wyoming and where else did we go?
Washington,
Oregon,
California, Arizona. Like we did a huge loop. This was our second trip.
Full time.
Yeah. Full time. Yeah. Yeah. We had no home.
It was awesome. So yeah, that was the turning point of, I think the thing that's impacted me the most.
And then just that process, I don't want to get in the weeds on that too. The process of letting go of the control.
Yep.
Because when we went through Arizona, we were in Moab and we were staying there. So we had towed a Jeep behind it. And so the RV was parked at an RV park and the Jeep, we were doing something, going to get some dinner and some ice cream. And we parked in front of an ice cream place. And after dinner, we were walking back and I noticed the Jeep was up on a curb, and you could tell that there was, pieces from a car and another car. Oh. And I remember walking around the corner, and there was almost like,
I was like,
weirdly,
that's not our Jeep, is it? That's not our Jeep, is it?
Like such peace about it.
Yeah.
And they were almost going to total it. It took 3 weeks to fix, and so there's a whole story and things that we learned in that process. Yeah. And that's not the first time either.
We can't.
Okay.
You can't. We will do a full episode, I promise.
On that trip, but on the other trip too.
We'll do it another episode.
With the truck engine blowing up and having to rebuild it.
Stay tuned for episode.
But it's all those things, you start to lose control, and you start to when you walk in those situations, they're never good. I don't wish them upon ourselves or anybody, but you hold it loosely of like, okay, what is it? And we saw some things because we were planning to head straight up north.
Right.
We saw things that we would have never seen. And
I think that was the lesson for me, was the art of surrender and the art of acceptance, which when you're a controller, right? Or if you're in fear or worry or doubt, we played the controller, right? We were manipulating things. And so that you've started to learn this lesson when you sit and hold your life like this. You're still intentional, right? We're still know where we want to go and what we want to do, but you learn to hold your hands open, and that is still a practice.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, daily.
But that was the art of surrender and acceptance for me. Yeah. For sure. Okay. I have one more question.
Last question.
Okay. So why now? Why are we doing this podcast? Why now?
Why not?
Why not? Hashtag, that's another new hashtag. Why not?
Why
Brilliant
not?
And insane. Hashtag why not?
Humble pie. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Why not? It's one of those things, and there's been a couple in our life where it's like, when we get here, then we'll do it. Yeah. And one of the things that I've learned too is when you care about something, when you want something so bad, that's typically the hardest thing to do, because that you're going to judge yourself by doing it, and potentially other people. You're going to get judged or, critiqued or whatever it may be. And so we know that there's no better time than now with some of the things that are going on. Yeah. And it's forced us to rethink some of how we're doing life, and some of the business things that we were wanting to do and were involved in. Yep. And so we're rethinking everything and putting into action new practices and habits. And it's some of our friends and people that we've, on social media, it's just, now's the time. Yeah. There's no better time than now to help people, to build out all the tools and resources, everything that we've learned, and then build the best community to support you to get stuff done.
Totally. Which is why I think we strategically called it Dream On, is because when you think of dreaming, we've rebranded our company to be called the Dream Factory. My book is called Dream, I Dare You. When you think of that, people have two immediate reactions. One, which is like, oh, come on, get real. Get real, welcome to life. You need to be realistic. You need to be logical. Have you looked in your bank account? Have you looked at the news? Have you tapped into social media? I mean, there's like that knee-jerk reaction. And then there's an immediate one that goes, yes. Like I was born for that. I was born to bring something to this world that no one else can bring. I was born to do what no one else can do. Like, you're the only Travis. I'm the only Julia. You listening, you're the only you. And so I even love like kind of the tongue in cheek of this Dream On, because it has both of those potential tones. But I think more than ever, like, we need to be dreaming.
Yeah. And it's the most vulnerable within those dreams. The things that mean the most to you are typically the things that are most vulnerable.
Yes.
So knowing that we have started and stopped the podcast and not put it out there. And so making the commitment to getting a team to help us with the podcast, getting a team to help us with the YouTube videos as we put this out, because we know what we want to create, which is an awesome community, and give our pain purpose and learn too, and constantly rethinking. Yep. Robert Kiyosaki has been a huge influence on me. And one of the things he says is there's three sides to a coin: the heads, the tails, and the center. You have to get different perspective. Yep. Your thoughts and has led you to where you're at. Yep. So you have to rethink.
Yeah, because your current thoughts aren't going to take you to where you've never been, because they got you to where you are.
Yeah, so you have to be around people that are challenging you, and then also being around people that can support you.
Yes.
Because it's easy to say, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll do it start next week. And if you don't have the community, whether it's your family or your friends, which typically are not the best unless they're really dreaming and going after what they want, they're typically not the best supporters of you doing something new and different.
And in their defense, all they know is the world that you've created to that point. So when you start to step out to create a whole new world, they don't know that world either, right? So even if they're not trying to be malicious, they're not trying to say you can't do it, though there are some that do that. It's because they're so used to you being here, and now you start to go there, and of course they're going to trigger and freak out and fear and worry, and what about that, and what about this, and want to control. Yeah, and so I think our greatest intention on these podcasts is to give you a platform to rethink, is to give you permission to dream, is to give you tools and insights into how to carry that out, right? Like dreamers don't just dream and sit on a beach and wish for a better world. Like they are activists. They are believers that are doing things. They're creators. They are the ones that like have to take something that's on the inside of them and bring it into the world around them. And so we want to provide conversation and tools around faith, family, business, marriage, finances, all the things that are so important in our lives. And I think more than ever before right now, just based upon truly where we are as a globe, that I just want to see dreamers set free. I want to see us wake up. I want to keep waking up. I love when you live awake. I want to see the people that are listening to this come alive and awake. That's what would be my greatest intention for this.
Yeah. Me too. I'm excited about it. It's still, kind of awkward a little bit, and bear with us as we learn and grow too. But I'm excited to see what's going to come, and ideally some of the things that we want to do and have planned for next year, and some online things, but also in person. Yeah, I'm excited about that too.
Yeah, and our intention is to share our dreams and the process with you, because it is not always pretty, and it's not easy, and it's not perfect, and so we will be very frank in sharing some of
the failures
and the stories and the feelings and the emotions and all the things.
Yep, absolutely.
So join us for our next episode. We're going to share our journey on how we rethink. Travis shared a little bit today, but that's the next episode.
Go more in depth.
Yeah.
So it's the whole premise of the podcast is not surfacey. We're not big on table talk and just to talk about the weather or what's going on with sports. And we want to talk about real things and things that we feel like matter to a lot of people, and sometimes don't go down that path or don't have the right resources or the right community to talk about like real things and living out your ultimate life, your dreams, your purpose, whatever you want to call it. We call it dreaming. But it's not just about dreaming. You have to take action. That's what this community and that's what this podcast is all about. It's not just listening to something. It's about taking some action once you have now those new thoughts.
The new thoughts. Yeah. So we're going to share with you in the next episode our journey to rethink, and then we're going to give you insights into how to start your own journey to rethink.
On behalf of both of us, thank you for listening to another episode of Dream On. Don't forget to visit our website, The Dream Factory & Co., for all the show notes and other tools and resources to get you unstuck, clear, and helping you reprogram your thoughts and beliefs so that you can live out your dreams with a community that supports and challenges you. Until next time, dream on.